The wind cut across the high desert like a blade, sharp and unforgiving, carrying dust and silence as Luke Calder, a 30-year-old cowboy hardened by years of riding alone, guided his horse along a narrow trail, twisting between red rock walls. A route he never planned to take, but was forced onto after a broken fence pulled him off the main road. And just as the sun dipped lower, he heard a faint sound. A weak cry, nearly swallowed by the wind, making him stop instantly because experience had taught him the frontier spoke softly before tragedy struck. And as he dismounted and followed the sound into a ravine, he saw a young Apache woman, no more than 25, trapped beneath fallen timber and thorned brush, her ankle caught, her hands scraped raw, her clothes torn from struggle and exposure, her body shaking from cold and fear as her dark eyes locked onto him with terror. And Luke raised his hands slowly, speaking calmly to show he meant no harm, then worked carefully with his knife to cut the brush and lift the heavy wood, fighting time, cold, and exhaustion, until finally she was free, though weak and barely able to stand, and when she collapsed he caught her without hesitation, wrapping his coat around her shoulders as he realized she would not survive the night out there alone. So he lifted her onto his horse and turned toward his ranch, knowing the choice he made would change both their lives forever. The ride to Luke's ranch was slow and silent, except for the sound of the wind and the horse's steady steps as the Apache girl leaned against him, shivering despite the coat around her. And when they reached the small wooden house tucked against the hills, Luke helped her inside, built a fire, and gave her water before carefully offering her clean clothes so she could change and warm herself, stepping outside to give her dignity. And when she returned, dressed in simple but warm clothing, her posture was stronger, though her eyes still carried the weight of survival. And without many words, she went to the small kitchen and prepared food using what little he had, cooking with quiet focus, as if grateful beyond speech. And when they sat together to eat, the firelight danced across the room, and something unspoken formed between them. A shared understanding of loneliness and endurance. And over time, she told him she had been wandering without a home, surviving day to day with no safe place to belong. And Luke listened without interrupting, feeling respect grow into something deeper. And when the meal ended, he finally spoke the truth. He had been holding back, telling her that saving her had not felt like chance, that having her there felt right, and that he wanted her to stay, not as charity but as his wife, offering her a future instead of survival. And after a long silence, she answered with honesty, saying she had nothing before him, no home, no safety, no tomorrow, and that he had given her all. 3. And if this was a new life, she was willing to walk it with him. The fire burned low that night as Luke stood quietly across from her, the weight of his words settling into the room like the calm after a storm. And when he stepped forward and kissed her, it was gentle, respectful, filled with gratitude rather than urgency, a promise instead of a demand. And from that moment their lives slowly began to change as days passed and the Apache girl grew stronger, her strength returning not only to her body but to her spirit as well. And she began helping around the ranch, learning its rhythms, while Luke watched her with admiration, realizing how deeply she belonged there, not as someone he rescued, but as someone who chose to stay. And with each sunrise they worked side by side, mending fences, tending animals, and sharing quiet meals that slowly turned into laughter. And the lonely ranch that once echoed with silence now felt alive. And one evening, as they sat beneath the wide open sky, Luke spoke again, this time with certainty, telling her that he did not want a temporary future or a fragile promise, but a life built together, a home where she would never feel unwanted or unsafe again. And she listened carefully before answering, saying that before meeting him she had known only survival, moving from place to place with no ground to stand on, no door to return to, and that being saved by him had not only spared her life, but had given her dignity, warmth, and a future she never believed she deserved. And she said yes to his proposal, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to stand beside him as an equal. And soon word spread among nearby settlers, and though the world around them was often divided, their union was met with quiet respect, and they were married in a simple ceremony beneath the open sky, with the land as their witness and the wind carrying their vows across the plains. And Luke looked at her not as the girl he found in the ravine, but as the woman who had chosen him. And she looked at him not as a savior, but as a partner. And as the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, they returned to the ranch as husband and wife, knowing the road ahead would not be easy, but would be faced together. And the cowboy who once rode alone now walked beside someone who matched his strength. And the Apache woman, who once had nothing now, had a home built on trust, respect, and love. And in the quiet of that land, their story ended not with an escape or a rescue, but with two lives choosing each other and beginning something far greater than either could have imagined alone.